Okay, hey everybody, Techie 101 once again back with BAN-KAST, the greatest Bleach-themed podcast, of course, there was one. Although I have to admit and apologize, the last episode of BAN-KAST wasn't the greatest of all time. It was actually not that great. The editing on that was not my best foot forward, so I have to apologize. There were a few editing flubs I left in that one. That was a bit of a rush job when it came to editing BAN-KAST. I was just like, all right, let's hurry up and get this done. It was funny because a lot of people commented, like, I think you accidentally uploaded the unedited version where I had all my flubs and everything left in, and it was like, no, that was the edited version. You didn't want to see the unedited version. Here's a tip for everybody that's doing a podcast or thinking about doing a podcast in the future. Don't drink carbonated beverages. You know, while you're doing your podcast, they might not be the best thing to really enjoy, either soda or a carbonated water, because, you know, there's a gas exchange there that might cause some issues. But I have, like, just regular water here today, so we're good, hopefully. Okay, let's just dive right in. This will be Bleach, 1000 Year Blood War Arc, Episode 9 Breakdown, The Drop. Oh, that's a good one. I love that, The Drop. Hold on, let's do some, like, even more extreme ASMR with that. The Drop. Oh, yeah. Okay, so we start off with Nanao Issei, the lieutenant of Squad 8 underneath Shunsui Kyoraku, and we didn't really get to see much of Nanao so far in this arc. Didn't really show up much, although we're going to find out a lot more about her and her family later on, and it will also explain why exactly Nanao... Throughout the story, Nanao's never really been a frontline fighter. Fun fact is she was the only lieutenant, the only high-ranking officer of the Gote 13 that did not participate in the Fate Karakura Town battle or the Huecomundo battle. Okay, because everybody else was either in Fate Karakura or in Huecomundo helping Ichigo's group out. Okay, so, you know, Yamamoto and Chodoro were at Fate Karakura, Soifon, Marecchio, they were both there. Gin had defected at that point. Izuru was in Fate Karakura. Unohana and Isane went to Huecomundo. Aizen defected. Even Momo, who was, like, on her, like, she was in her sick bed, she even went to Fate Karakura. Byakuya and Renji were both in Huecomundo. Sajin and Ibo were in Fate Karakura. Shunsui just by himself was in Fate Karakura. Tozen defected. Shuhei was there, though. Toshiro and Rangiku were in Fate Karakura. Kenpachi and Yachiru went to Huecomundo. Mayuri and Nemu were in Huecomundo. And then Ukitake. Okay, I guess Kiyone and Sentaru both also did not go to Fate Karakura, but they were not lieutenants. They were co-third seats of the 13th Division. Ukitake did not actually have a lieutenant at that time, but even he went, okay? So, and he's very sickly, okay? And he participated in the battle. So that means I like to think that all of the Seireite's, like, day-to-day operations, everything, like, Nanao had to manage all of that for while Huecomundo's battles and Fate Karakura battles were going on. Like, Nanao was essentially the head captain for, like, that brief period while all those battles against Aizen were going on. Like, that's the only explanation. She was the only one that wasn't there. And beyond just her superior managerial skills, you know, she's the one that reins in Shunsui and everything like that. There is a practical reason why she did not fight, and we're going to find that out later on. But here she is, trying to talk to Shunsui, her captain, and it's a very somber moment where she walks in, and, you know, she's been down this road before with Shunsui. Like, he's, you know, he just kind of leaves sometimes, doesn't tell her where he's going, goes out and gets drunk, you know, whatever. So Nanao at this point is just like, Captain, if you were in the room, you should have told me, you know? Like, it's like she's not kind of even done with this herself. But this is a little different. This is a little bit of a somber moment here where we have Shunsui just sitting in his office and reading a letter. And all he kind of says to her is, we might have to say goodbye, Nanao-chan. And we see the letter that he gets, and it's from the Central 46, the highest government body in the Seireite. And it just simply says, appointing Shunsui Jiro Sakuranosuke Kyoraku as head captain and Squad 1 captain. By the way, you gotta love the, that is a message to get in the mail, isn't it? Like, they don't even go on into further detail with it. They don't even say, like, report to the Central 46 barracks at this time of this day. They just literally send him a letter that says, you're the head captain now. This isn't a choice. You don't get to appeal this. You don't get to debate with us. We're the Central 46. You're the new head captain. There it is. They don't even list his responsibilities. They just like, you're the head captain. You figure it out. Like, how would you feel to just get that letter in the mail? Like, you're working for a company one day, and let's say the former CEO of the company just steps down, and you just get a letter in the mail that just says, you're the new CEO. Nothing else. Nothing else to explain what you got to do. Just, you're the new CEO. That's it. That's all it is. Anyway, so we went into length with this in the last episode of why Shunsui was most likely chosen. There was really no other options on the table. Maybe Uketake, but he's really sick. Sajin might have been a good choice, but I think he was like too devoted to the previous head captain, and he was also very emotional at the death of Yamamoto. So that's the reason they probably wouldn't have selected him. And then Byakuya, I think, would have been a good choice too, but unfortunately, he might be dying soon, so he's not in a position to accept this. They needed to pick somebody right now in order to become the next head captain, so they went with Shunsui. Now we cut back over to the Soul Palace, though, where we're in the Kirin Den, and this is, of course, Tenjiro Karinji's place, where we have Ichigo just taking a nice, relaxing soak in the hot springs, okay? We also have some servants of the Kirin Den underneath Karinji that are helping Ichigo out with his training. No, this is totally training 100%, so they were literally holding Ichigo under the water until he could count to 100, and he almost made it. He made it to, like, 98, and then Ichigo just burst out, and Karinji's like, you failed, you fool! And, didn't you know your parents, kept you in the water up until you can count to 100? Isn't that how it works? And Ichigo's like, what kind of parent makes their kid yet not under the water, you idiot? They would die. So, and anyway, at this point, Karinji decides just to, like, punch Ichigo in the face, which he does. And at that point, he's just like, yeah, you're good. Your wounds are healed. Ichigo's bandages come off. Of course, you see his rippling abs. He's perfectly healed. And he's like, if you weren't healed, that punch would have killed you. So you're good. You can now go to the next palace in the royal palace, I guess. The next palace of the royal palace. There we go. And so that's moving on there. I just wanted to bring up a couple of things here. Oh, first of all is Karinji's pompadour. It was actually explained in a after the chapter in the tankobons. Oda will give like little bit of like side like sketches and stuff, and it was revealed in this one that Karinji's pompadour can actually support, I think, 120 kilos. So that's a lot. That's a lot of kilos that pompadour can support. Okay. Anyway, I want to bring up a few things involving the hot spring here, okay? Because this was something that confused me back in the manga reviewing days, and it still kind of confuses me now. So, in the last episode, it was explained that there's two different hot springs. There's the white one, and then there's the red one, okay? There's, the white water bath and the red water bath, okay? The white water bath, like, last episode, we saw it, like, extracting out the blood and the bad Ryatsu out of, like, Byakuya, and then Karinji picks him up and yeets him into the red bath, and that replenishes the blood. And it's like back and forth, and that's how you heal somebody. And it's like, okay, that makes sense. But now in this episode, it's weird because it's acting like this bath does the same thing that the bath did back in the Soul Society that like Yoruichi and Ichigo were in, or the hot springs that were in Unohana's shop, that they all base them off of Karinji. Karinji's healing method is like the superior healing method in the entirety of the Soul Society, and so it makes sense that Unohana and Yoruichi would base it off of that. However, it's just a little bit strange because here it seems to be like, yeah, if you soak in the white pond, it just, hyper recovery like normal, but it also kind of extracts your blood. But Ichigo didn't have any of his blood extracted. I guess it depends on how bad your wounds are, I suppose. And then there's also the logic of Karinji punching Ichigo in the face of like, yeah, if you were already still injured, that would have killed you. But like, even if you're fully healed, me punching you, wouldn't that just wound you again? So I don't know. It's weird. It's a weird kind of setup, but anyway, Ichigo's healed. That's the point of this seminar. Renji also pops up, and he says, hey, if Ichigo's going to the next palace, I want to go to the next palace too. To which then Karinji punches Renji, and he endures it with a little bit more difficulty. Ichigo didn't really have any response to it whatsoever. Renji sort of had to, like, tense himself up, like, prepare him, like, like, I'm going to endure this, and it's like, oh, yeah, got another one in you, kind of like that. But Korinji's like, yeah, all right. I mean, yeah, if you resisted my punch, yeah, you should be okay. All right, I'll send you on to the next palace as well. And with that, we have the two guys here in the wetsuits. They pound down the hammer, and then boom, Ichigo and Renji get sent flying off to the next palace. Aren't there any other ways of getting around in this place? I mean, hey, listen, when you have, okay, you're imagining God's palace, all right, where God lives. Do you think God's just going to have, like, I don't know, an escalator or an elevator or something like that? Like, no. There's going to be platforms you got to stand on that get hit by a hammer, that get sent flying off to the next palace. I mean, that's just how you're going to get around in heaven, you thought that heaven had a stairway. Well, apparently Led Zeppelin was wrong about that. Sorry, there are in fact no stairways in heaven. This is how you get around. Whatever. So next up, we have the two guys. Their names are Kazuo and Kazuhiro. They're sort of like in the same vein as Kukaku Shiba's servants that work for her, Ganahiko and Shiraganahiko. So just like two really muscular twins that have very similar sounding names. So this is Kazuo and Kazuhiro, and they work in the Kirin Den alongside Korinji, because the idea is, like, there was like those whole cities that were on their individual palaces, okay? So there's got to be like a lot of people working in each palace, and these are just two of them, okay? That are like the personal assistants of Korinji, okay? So they take off their wetsuits, and the wetsuits like immediately like burst into flames when they hit the ground, and then you can see their bodies are heavily injured from being in the water, and they liken that to the super recovery. So they mentioned that the robes were made out of like a super reijutsu, which is the type of reijutsu that exists in the Soul Palace. These were also most likely created by something we did not know in the first manga draft, but these were most likely created by Senjumaru Shutara, the woman we saw in the last episode that has the puppet hands, because her whole thing is weaving and creating clothing, and so she was probably the one that weaved the Super Ryatsu into these wetsuits for them to wear, and if it wasn't for these this protective gear, their bodies would have literally like ruptured and exploded. So they look pretty bad right here, like their veins are popping out and they're burned heavily, and their muscles are like twitching from the damage, but they mentioned that if they weren't wearing those, they would have just died. Like their bodies would have just exploded from the super regeneration and a too much healing method, okay? And so, yeah, but they once again bring up, yet Ichigo and Renji were able to kind of just chill out naked in the White Bone Hell. That's something else that I'm kind of, I guess you have to leave the pond as soon as you're healed, or else it causes extreme damage to you. So like Byakuya and Rukia, they're still in the ponds. I guess they haven't been fully healed yet. Rukia did get punched in the face by Meninas McAllen, so that's probably going to take a while to heal. But yeah, like as soon as you're healed, you gotta leave. Like Ichigo was kind of hanging out in there a little bit even after he was healed, and he was able to endure it just fine. We also have a scene here with Korinji talking about how, like he's basically just a little bit of bragging about how strong he is. They called me lightning fast Tenjiro. And they show the scene from the last episode where he grabs Soifon's arm. Soifon is like one of the fastest, if not the fastest member of the Gotei 13, and Tenjiro Korinji was even faster than her. So he mentions, I'm lightning fast Tenjiro, and I love this in the original, way back in the day, the original manga stream version of this. He was like, I still have the skills to pay the bills. Let me tell you, I still have the skills to pay the bills. Here he just says, I'm pretty sure I haven't lost my touch yet. So he's still just as fast as he always was in his prime. And he mentions that despite that, though, Ichigo, when Korinji punched him, was able to reflexively counter Korinji, and he fractured his hand. And so now he's resting his hand in the pond in order to heal up after Ichigo's counter-strike, okay? Counter-strike! So that's just basically Korinji mentioning that, like, yeah, Ichigo and Renji, they're both really strong, and they're going to get a lot more powerful while they're here in the Soul Palace. I could see why the Soul King was so into him. Oh boy, the Soul King is into Ichigo. All right, what do you do when God has a crush on you? I don't know. All right, so now we cut over to the Central 46 Barracks. The Central 46 are essentially like the Senate of the Soul Society, or the Seirete specifically. They're the ones that come up with all the laws. They're the bureaucrats, basically, okay? They're made up, as the name implies, of 46 members. I believe the way it works is there are 40 sages and 6 judges. So I guess the sages or wise men is like another way of looking at it, are just really wise people from different districts around in the Soul Society, or maybe they're members of noble clans or something like that. And then the 6 judges, maybe I guess, have final say on everything. So they're the ones that ultimately decide on, like, whenever a new law is passed. We don't get to see what the Central 46 does most of the time, mainly because it's probably pretty boring stuff. You know, it's just like, okay, who wants to vote on the new garbage collection bill for the Soul Society? Whenever we do see them, they're usually doing important stuff like, you know, being murdered by Aizen or sentencing Aizen to Muken, that kind of stuff, right? So they have now, you know, they've stated that Shunsui is going to be the new head captain, so Shunsui is obviously meeting with them. And it's really funny, though, the level of, like, how tightly wound the Central 46 is, because Shunsui goes to them and he's just like, okay, well, since I'm the head captain now, I want to appoint 2 lieutenants to my squad. And all of the Central 46 members, or at least this guy, is like, that is unacceptable! 2 lieutenants? That is most unorthodox! You shall not do that! And it's just like, dude, what's the big deal? Like, who cares? Like, the head captain has 2 lieutenants? That makes more sense for the first squad to have 2 lieutenants. It's the most important squad. It's the most important position of the Gotei to be the head captain. Who gives a crap if there's 2 lieutenants? That means more stuff will get done, probably. And Shunsui brings it up very logically. He's like, you know, Okikiba, who is the current 3rd seed of the First Division, we saw him earlier. He did not die when the First Division exploded when Yuha, you know, ignited it, you know, so I guess he made it out okay. But Okikiba, he wants him to be the new lieutenant because he actually knows how the First Division is run because he was under Yamamoto for so long. And he wants Nanao because Nanao is like his personal assistant and knows how to handle him, you know? And it's just like, it seems like a pretty reasonable request, especially since this is right after like the vast majority of the Gotei was annihilated by the Quincy's and like a good chunk of the Seirete burned down. This seems like a pretty light request. Honestly, like even from just the perspective of it being like a wartime sort of situation, you'd think the Central 46 would just be like, oh, you want 2 lieutenants? All right, that's a little bit unorthodox, but considering the extreme circumstances as of late, sure, fine, you could have 2 lieutenants. Maybe we'll talk about it after everything calms down, but for right now, sure, you can have 2. I love how even despite all this stuff going on, Quincy's invading, pretty much their entire way of life being destroyed, this numbnuts right here in the Central 46 has to be like, that's against the rules! You know, like, and I'm just like, whatever. So Shunsui's like, you know, you're the ones that said that the head captain gets to, you know, enlist their own lieutenants. They get to choose who their lieutenants are. You never specified how many, and it's a loophole. And then they're like, oh, fine. So anyway, moving on, the first official piece of business is Shunsui says, I intend to teach Kenpachi Zaraki Zanjutsu. Zanjutsu being one of the 4 fighting methods of the Shinigami. Korinji mentioned another one earlier, Ho-Ho, which is the high-speed movement. So Korinji mentions that like he's basically the best user of Ho-Ho in the entire Soul Society, Soul Palace, everything. It's not the legendary bird from Gen 2 of Pokemon. That's Ho. This is Ho-Ho, okay? There's a difference. Zanjutsu is the way of the sword, and then Hakuda is hand-to-hand combat, and Kirio is the spells. Okay, so those are the 4 main fighting methods of the Shinigami. So he's like, yeah, I need to teach Kenpachi the way of the sword because he's never actually formally trained outside of 1 day with Yamamoto, and that was it, okay? Kenpachi, everything else he's learned with his sword and how he's learned how to murderify everybody, that's on his own. He's not like following any particular type of like martial art or kendo or anything like that. He's just going around slicing people up with his sword, and he's just really good at it, right? Well, anyway, this is something the Central 46, it makes maybe a little bit more sense on why they're against this, because they even say it right here. You know, if Kenpachi were to get too strong and he decides to revolt, we might not be able to stop him. And so all of the Seirete might be, you know, covered in blood, which is kind of like what it is right now after the Quincy's. So it's sort of like the Godzilla Protocol. You guys know about the Godzilla Protocol? The Godzilla Protocol is a trope You can look it up over on like TV Tropes or whatever. And it's, or maybe not the Godzilla Protocol. I think it's called the Godzilla Threshold is like the official name of it. Yeah. Well, basically, it's like, how bad can things get for the good guys for them to actually consider releasing Godzilla? Which, when you release Godzilla, it's sort of like the whole city burns down kind of a thing. But it's like, if we're facing against a threat that is so damn powerful, so overwhelming, and we are out of our depth here, well, it's either we all die or we release Godzilla, and maybe, you know, not the whole city will burn down, but Godzilla will be able to handle it. Kenpachi Zaraki is Godzilla in this context, in case you didn't know. So they even mentioned that Genryu Sai, you know, Yamamoto, the former head captain, trained Zaraki for 1 day in kendo. We actually see that flashback when he fought Noitora back in Huecamundo, and he's like, we actually had to urge him to stop after 1 day, because after just 1 day of training, Yamamoto, I guess, reported back and how strong Zaraki became, and they're like, okay, we're gonna put the lid on that right away. We don't want him getting any stronger, okay? Because if Kenpachi learned like an actual like the way of the sword, like kendo, like imagine if Yamamoto truly dedicated Zaraki to learn that way of the sword, and like every single day Yamamoto personally trained him. Kenpachi would be like a damn, you know, like he would be like Godzilla. He would just be like, there's no way Ichigo would have been able to beat him during the Soul Society arc. No way. But he didn't do that. He didn't do that. So now they're going to teach him, because like they have no other means here. You know, they bring up, you know, well, anyway, Shunsui brings up, you know, or will you be able to protect yourselves? Because the Central 46 don't have, like, they're not Shinigami in the sense of like having really strong bankais. They're just bureaucrats. They're members of a senate. That's it. That's all they are. They kind of make decisions and stuff, and that's all. Maybe some of them know Kido, Shunpo. Maybe they have Zanpakutos. Maybe they don't, because like, yeah, that's not really their job. So yeah, they wouldn't be able to protect themselves. And yeah, Shunsui brings up that the first Kenpachi is going to teach Kenpachi Zaraki directly, and that is, of course, Yachiru Unohana, who that is actually her real name. Retsu Unohana is a name she adopted. I love this shot right here. There's another one later on in the episode I'm thinking is probably going to be the thumbnail for this, but this is also a really solid one too. When she still has her hair set like, you know, she's the captain of Squad 4, and she's so kind, and she's the great healer and everything like that, but no, she still has the somber expression on her face like, I have to confront my past. I have to go back to being who I was. So Retsu just means like violence or fierceness, which definitely fits her. But Yachiru is a name that indicates 8,000 styles, which is the amount of, you know, styles she has mastered with the sword. It's also Yachiru Kusajishi's namesake, who is Kenpachi's current lieutenant, you know, the little kid with the pink hair. When Kenpachi found her as an orphan in District 79. Well, she's from District 79. Zaraki is from District 80, which is the furthest district out in the boonies of the Rukon district at all. It's as far as you can get out. It's the most lawless land. The Shinigami pretty much have no authority there. And yeah, it's actually called Zaraki. So Zaraki took the name from the district he was from, and he gives the name Yachiru Kusajishi to his lieutenant. So Yachiru because of Yachiru Unohana, and Kusajishi because of District 79. Also, it's important to mention that Rukia and Renji were both from District 78, a place that meant hanging dog. It was another place that wasn't very, very good to live in. So moving now back to the Soul Palace, we have Ichigo and Renji. They have some good back and forth in this episode. I like that we get to hang out with Ichigo and Renji for a bit here, where they have the, you know, they're sort of both really tough guys competing with each other kind of dude. They're just kind of like, they're kind of bros. That's it. You know, they're just like, you know, you're going to go on the bottom. No, bro, you're going to go on the bottom. That might have, you know, this out of context, maybe in a different way, but no, they're good friends. They're good friends. Anyway, at this point, neither of them have to go on the bottom, because it turns out Kon is actually inside of Ichigo's, well, actually, you know what's funny? Ichigo's in his Bankai outfit right now still, and I find it funny that Ichigo, while in his Bankai, can just, like, take off his Bankai outfit and then soak in the bath and then just put it back on like a normal outfit, because it's his Bankai, you know, it's the final release of his sword, so I guess he still hasn't released it from fighting Yuha. and the sword being cut and everything like that. So he just like he could just take off the outfit and then take a bath and like is Ichigo still in his Bankai when he doesn't have the Shihakusho on? Or when he puts his Shihakusho on, does he go back into Bankai? I don't know, because there are things that when Ichigo goes into his Bankai, there are things that are notable. Like, he gets faster when he's in his Bankai. He gets a lot faster. So, if Ichigo's sword is broken, and if he takes off his Bankai outfit, can he still move super fast? Or is it only when he puts the Shihakusho back on can he move super fast? I don't know. Anyway, Kon is there, and yeah, we didn't get a lot of comedy with Kon in the last episode, but we get a little bit of it here. So Kon has a muscle form now, and we actually did see this in the manga in the last episode, well, in the manga of the last chapters, but they cut it in the anime. By the way, this episode covers chapters 520 to 524. It covers 5 chapters. However, it does cut a lot of stuff out because it's moving it around to the next episode to kind of make things work the best. And I think that's also why they included a little bit more of the comedy scenes in this one, because in chapter 500 and I think 22, Ichigo and Renji go to the third palace, and then they cut all that out in this episode in favor of focusing on the fight between Kenpachi and Unohana. So, and they're going to have all of the third palace stuff in the next episode. Probably episode 10 is the way they're going to do that. So they moved a lot of stuff around, basically, in this one. So Kon can transform into this muscle form. He calls it his King of New York form. Kon, K-O-N, so King of New York. And so it's very handy as a landing cushion, though, because they land at the next palace, the Gatonden, and they use him as basically a giant trampoline. They land, and then they are welcomed by this lady. This is Kirio Hikefune, the most recent member of Squad Zero, and she's welcoming them in the same way that your grandma probably would welcome you. I don't know anything about your grandma, but in the case with my grandma, she would welcome you with a feast. It's like, oh, you look so skinny, Matthew. You need to eat. You need to eat. You need to eat. Oh, that was a lot when I was growing up. He's like, I would go down my grandparents to my Bubba's house, and yeah, when I was a little kid, she would always say to my mom, she'd be like, Matthew looks so skinny. He looks so skinny. Is he eating right? And just like the reality of the situation is, I would eat until I'm full, and then I would be good, you know? And it just like, it wouldn't take a lot for me to get full. That's it, you know? Like, yeah, but I remember that a lot. My mom would always worry about that, and my grandmother would always worry about that. And so Kirio, you know, in a similar way there, she's like, oh, we got to cook some food. You guys are so scrawny, you know? So this is the Gaton Den, or, you know, the Piggy Palace, however you want to say it. She almost knocks Ichigo and Renji off the side of it, you know, and keep in mind, there's, like, nothing on the way down. Actually, later on, we find out what happens when you fall from the Soul Palace, like, when you physically fall off the edge. And it's not good. It's not pleasant. It's basically like re-entering the Earth's atmosphere. You burn up on contact and you die. All right? Like, it's not fun. You have to have very specific, you have to be wearing a very specific kind of material, like a heat shield made of super Ryatsu, or you're going to burn up on re-entry if you fall back down, okay? So, probably a good thing they held on. Ichigo's just like, is there nothing but idiots in this place? So she's in the kitchen cooking up a massive heroes feast. And, man, some of the food in this episode looks really good. Oh, I could go for some fried rice right now. I made fried rice a couple weeks ago. It turned out really good. Had some shrimp, had some pork, had some chicken in there. Oh, man, it was really good. Anyway, oh, look at that meat. Oh, look at that sauce. Oh, look at the potatoes. Oh, my God, that looks so good. Ichigo and Renji are just like, what? It's like, oh, my God, look at the shellfish over there. Oh, my God, the bread. Oh, man, this would have been great. I want to go to the Gaton Den, guys. And so Kon is like, oh, man, this is amazing. Let's eat. And Ichigo's just like, you idiot. You know, do you think that, you know, she would just make all this food? Like, they're very distrusting. And Kirio even comes in and says, like, oh, you're very distrustful, probably because of Kisuke Uehara. Remember, Kirio was the former captain of Squad 12 right before Uehara became the captain. So, and also, you know, Shutara apparently had something to do with the 12th Division as well at some point. But from what we understand, it went Kirio, Uehara, and then Mayuri. And so she would know Uehara a little bit back when he was, well, no, he was the third seed of the 2nd Division before he was promoted. So he wasn't in the 12th Division while Kirio was there, but would still probably know about her, of course. Anyway, and because Hiyori was also part of the 12th Division under Uehara. Hiyori Sarugaki was the 12th Division lieutenant back and Turn Back the Pendulum, and Hiyori was very close friends with Kirio. So, that's how that all connects back together. But anyway, yeah, she explains to them that literally her job is to feed them. Her job is to make sure your bellies are full. And there's a practical reason for that later, but they're like, listen, this is no joke. This is no, I'm not oh, you can eat all this food, but first you have to battle this giant dragon. And Ichigo and Renji is like, oh, we knew it was going to be a giant dragon. I was like, no, just pig out, eat the food, have fun, all you can eat buffet, have fun with it. And so in that regard, Ichigo and Renji are just kind of staring at her and are just like, okay, let's eat. It's just time to eat, man. They haven't had food in a while. It's been crazy, with the whole thing with Wakamundo, and then going to the Soul Society, being trapped in the hamster ball, and then fighting Yuha. It's one of those things whenever you have a really stressful time of your life when you're not hungry. And then as soon as the stress subsides and it's like, oh my God, I'm glad that's over with, all of a sudden your body kind of resets and it oh, by the way, you're really hungry right now. It's like, oh, damn. And you have to start, eating, just pig out. So there you go. Oh, yeah, look at that slurping action right there. Renji with the noodles. Yeah, anyway, Kirio says she's going to go make dessert. They're piling high, the giant bowls. Man, I'm getting really hungry. I should have filmed this video before. I mean, I shouldn't have filmed this video before I had lunch. I'm going to go have lunch after this. I'm going to enjoy myself. Anyway, so Ichigo's just chowing down. Nom, nom, nom. Kon just is there for the party. He's not even there for training. He's just, oh, cool, I'm here. I get to eat food as well. That's awesome. Ichigo does have a moment. Oh, no, there's one more scene here with Renji that I love where he's looking at the weird caterpillar-looking thing, and he's just like, I don't know what this is, and he eats it, and it actually tastes really good. And he goes on and on about, the texture and, the flavor and, oh, the palate of this is so good. My tongue is just in heaven. And Ichigo yells at him for his, lame food critiques or whatever, but apparently it's really good. Hey, if I'm at the Gonton Den, if you're in God's kitchen, if you're in God's kitchen, not Hell's kitchen, but if you're in Heaven's kitchen, you try everything, right? I'm trying to think, what's my least favorite food? What's a food that I just hate? I'm not a fan of cottage cheese. That's just, ugh, even thinking about that is just, I hate cottage cheese. Oh my God. Oh my God. My other grandmother would make me that. I remember I went down there one day to my other grandmother's house, my dad's mom, and she was like, are you hungry, Matthew? And I'm like, yeah. And she's like, what do you want? And I'm like, I don't know, because I'm a very indecisive child. And she's like, well, do you like cottage cheese? And I had no idea what it was. So she gives me cottage cheese. I'm 6 at this point. I don't know what kind of person gives a 6-year-old cottage cheese and expects them to like it, but that's my grandma. And so she gave it to me, and I took one bite of it, and it was the most disgusting thing I've ever had in my life. So, yeah, no on cottage cheese, definitely. But if I was in God's kitchen and I saw a big plate of cottage cheese, I'd give it a go, it's, you got to, right? So anyway, by the way, every time I went down there since, I would always just ask for macaroni and cheese, and my grandmother would kind of make fun of it. It's like, oh, every time, macaroni and cheese, don't you want anything else? I'm like, no, I like macaroni and cheese. Macaroni and cheese is good. It's like, I like it. Anyway, so Ichigo brings up at this point that, hey, Renji, should we really be doing this here right now? And the reason he brings that up is, everybody down in the Seirei right now is, training like crazy and, are severely injured and trying to get better and stronger and to fight the Quincy's. And all we're doing is literally taking baths and eating food. We've been here, we've been to 2 palaces. We're apparently training with the strongest members of the entirety of the Shinigami as, at all. And it's yeah, we're just taking a bath and eating food. And you can understand why Ichigo's a little bit, hesitant, because this episode has a little bit more of a lighthearted comedy feel to it, sort of old school, kind of first arc of Bleach kind of situation that Kubo's really drawing up here. And it's good to have that after the very, very somber events from the first invasion of the Vandenreich. And so it's nice to kind of just relax a little bit, but Ichigo's like, man, I just feel weird. I feel so guilty right now. I'm eating all this delicious food, and, down below, the head captain is dead, and all the other captains are training like crazy, and blood, sweat, and tears, and here I am eating General So's. You know what I mean? Like, is that really okay? And you know what? Renji actually has, like, this is one of the episodes, the part of the episode I actually enjoy, with Renji actually reassuring Ichigo kind of in the best way he can, basically calling him dumb. He's like, Ichigo, are you really that dumb? Hey, we got injured during the fight, so we took a bath to heal ourselves, and now after we're done healing, obviously our bodies are going to need food to recover fully, so we're eating. We took a bath to heal, and now we're eating food to replenish ourselves. Seems pretty simple to me, you know what I mean? And obviously there is a reason to all of this. Like, you know, Korinji's healing method is much better than a regular healing method, and this food is actually infused with super Ray Jutsu, so their bodies are now on a much higher level than they were before. So, practical reason for all this, and I guess it just makes sense that when you're training with, like, God's personal, like, entourage, you know, the regular training methods don't really apply, you know, like swinging your sword 1,000,000 times in a row, or, you know, the sweat on your brow. No, you just take baths and eat food. There you go. I mean, that's fitting. After this, it kind of snaps Ichigo back to reality a little bit, and then they go into a little bit of an eating contest there. And who's going to win the eating contest, ladies and gentlemen? It looks like Ichigo is tackling the fried rice with the awesome sauce, and it looks like Renji's got the seafood special. Who's going to win? Kone's also coming up from behind. But anyway, they get distracted by their little eating contest when Kirio returns. I guess it's only natural for a lieutenant to figure it out, and that's Renji figuring out that, like, the food is part of their training. You know, it's not just, you know, them eating for the sake of just being gluttons. There is a reason for it. All right, so, you know, when the Bleach 1,000-Year Blood War arc was announced, you know, there's a few key scenes in the anime that I was waiting for. I think a lot of people were waiting for. There were some scenes that happened that didn't even happen in the manga, like the introduction of the original Gotei 13. Like, that was something that was a treat. That was a special moment. That was like, wow, I'm so glad that they incorporated that. That's so cool. But then there's other scenes. I think I said Yamamoto's Bankai was one of them. And, you know, that was certainly probably like one of the first things I thought of when the 1,000-Year Blood War arc was announced to have an anime adaptation. Like, okay, one of the first big events of the arc is when Yamamoto goes Bankai against Yuha, right? And it's like his strongest weapon. Well, these are Kirio's strongest weapons. Okay, so there we go. There's the joke. All right, there we go. Okay, so that's that. All right, check that off the list. I'm glad they didn't cut that one. They cut Rukia's peaches from the last one. They didn't cut Kirio's assets in this one. All right, so anyway, yes, this is Kirio Hikefune's true form. This is how she looked 100 years ago. This is the form that Shinji is more acquainted with, which is why last time Shinji was, like, so surprised at Kirio's new, like, rather plump appearance. And so Kirio walks out of the kitchen, and she just kind of goes on a monologue. And I got to be honest with you, I had to watch this scene twice because I'm like, I kind of even missed what she was saying. But she goes on about how so yeah, that's the correct reaction there. She mentions that the training that you are doing, the baths you are taking, and the food you are eating, you know, that's on a Soul King scale. You know, this is literally the million-year history of the Soul Society culminating in this type of training that you are undergoing right now, okay? Which basically means you don't have to worry about, like, training in the traditional way. We've sort of streamlined this so we can incorporate it this way into you. Of course, Ichigo, Renji, and especially Kone are not paying attention to a word of this, because Kirio has changed her appearance quite drastically here. Also, but there is something important I want to mention before we continue on. She mentions the million-year history of the Soul Society. This is something that is mentioned in the Can't Fear Your Own World light novel. And that is that the Soul Society really is 1,000,000 years old. Like, 1,000,000 years ago is when the first, the progenitors of the individual noble clans first appeared. That was when the progenitor of the Shihoin clan, the Kuchiki clan, the Shiba clan, and then there's the other clan that I always forget that is mentioned, like the main villain in Kin for Your Own World is part of that clan. And then there's a fifth one. I always forget that because I originally assumed there were 4 noble clans, and then the Shiba clan was, defected, or they got kicked out basically for reasons, and now there's only 3. There were originally 5. Then the Shiba clan got kicked out, and now there's only 4. Okay, but there were 5 originally, and so this goes back to the original, like the creation story of the Soul Society and all the dimensions themselves. It involves how the Soul King came into existence, and this took place 1,000,000 years ago, which you think about that for a moment. That is a long time ago, okay? The whole events with the Vanenreich invading and the Gotei 13 being formed, that was 1,000 years ago. That was just 1,000 years ago. So you take the 1,000 years ago times another 1,000, and then you get to the origin of the Soul Society in general, which this is before, like, anything. This is before the creation of the Zanpakuto. This is before probably the Seirei existed, the Senzaikyu, before the Gotei, before Kido existed, before any of these fighting systems existed. It all started with the 5 original clans and the Soul King. And the story with the Soul King is for another day. But she does mention it here, so I did want to bring that up because it is relevant. Anyway, speaking of relevance, yeah, she makes a cake. She made a really nice cake. That cake probably tastes really damn good. But then Ichigo's like, what? I love the serious expression on Ichigo's face. Like, what, who are you? Who are you? And it's like Kirio has a moment where she's like, what? What are you guys? Oh, this. Yeah, well, you see, I use up a lot of my Ryatsu when I'm cooking because I'm infusing all of my energy and the Super Ryatsu into the food. It takes a lot out of me, so I slim down a lot. I have to, eat a lot of food in between sessions to, plump back up, and then I can continue eating. I'm not complaining. I just will bring up one thing that is, like, It really doesn't make biological sense when you think about the logic here, when it's like, I need to have a lot of fat in order to cook, and then when I cook, all that fat goes away, but she still has massive. Anyway, moving on. Kirio Hikefune, the Grain King, all right? And she has a little wink. She's winking at the audience. There you go. And then that's who she is. Now, we cut away from this, and she begins to get a little serious here. She talks about how every member of the Squad Zero created something in the Soul Society. That's how you become a member of Squad Zero. Her creation was the Gikon, or the temporary soul. The concept of Gikon did not exist until I created it, so she was accepted into the Zero Squad 100 years ago. And it also has something to do... I wish that there was more stuff with Kon and Kirio here, because Kon literally is a mod soul, which is a variation of the artificial soul technology. And so Kon just leaves with Ichigo and Renji, and they go to the next palace. But I really wish that Kon would have stayed behind, and maybe there would have been some explanation, some talk between Kirio and Kon. Maybe Kon could have gotten some kind of buff, or some kind of, like, maybe gotten stronger with, Kirio's assistance. I don't know. But she talks about the soul candies and why she was accepted. I mentioned in the last episode that in order to become a member of the Zero Squad, you need to have created something, like contributed to the Soul Society, and you can't get into the Zero Squad just by being really, really strong. And apparently that's not the case. Apparently there's something in one of the light novels that, like, one of the Kenpachis back in the day was, like, either got accepted into the Zero Squad or was considered for the Zero Squad just because of their strength alone. And I don't know about that. I mean, there's exceptions for everything. Like, even the Bankai destruction rule has exceptions, like Sajin. So I guess there's exceptions, that's fine. But it's like, I don't know, it's kind of weird when you was like, oh, we are like, this group can only be, you can only be accepted into this group when you create something and you contribute to the Soul Society's history. And it's like some kind of thing that's really, really special and really like an honored thing that you can't just get into by being a really strong musclehead. But it's like, no, there really was a strong musclehead, and it's like, okay, whatever. It's in the light novel, so I'll accept it, but, like, whatever. Anyway, Ichigo and Renji begin to feel the power that is now coursing through their veins because of the food that they ingested. They now have Super Reiatsu, so they're just a lot stronger than they were before. If you can sense that even a little, then it's good. However, she brings up the next palace is going to be a little bit of an issue. The next palace is the Hōden, which is the one that is under the control of Oetsu Nimaya, and he is the one that created the Zanpakuto. So this is where Ichigo and Renji will reforge their swords. Ichigo and Renji's swords were both damaged. Ichigo's Tensazangetsu was damaged by Hashwolf, and Renji's Shikai was damaged by Maste Masculine, but even before that, his Bankai was damaged by when he was fighting Byakuya way back in the day. So, yeah, he would probably need some, he would need Zabimaru to get, like, fixed up a little bit as well. So, at this point, in the manga, they immediately cut to them going to the next palace. That's when the next chapter starts out. However, in this episode, they cut away from that for right now. We have the interstitch on the episodes. We have the Datans here, the Datans. We have the Kirin Den, and we have the Ganton Den, and now we're cutting back to the Soul Society. So we're gonna see all the stuff with Nimaya and the Hōden and the second and the third palace in the next episode. But for right now, we see the Seirei here looking pretty bad, pretty battle-worn, but then we cut down to the central underground great prison, final level, Muken. So this is the place where Aizen is imprisoned. However, just because of the nature of Muken, it's kind of like some sort of like pocket dimension is the best way I can describe it. It's a dimension that is sort of endless. So you don't have to worry about like Aizen like being right there when they open the door. It's kind of like this infinite pocket dimension space, which makes it the perfect place for two Kenpachis to duke it out, I would say. So here's Kenpachi. By the way, that statement that was made by one of the Squad 2 members in a couple of episodes ago, like, you know, Squad 6 captain and Squad 11 captains, they're severely wounded. I don't know if they're going to be able to come back to their duties. Yeah, that's not true. Kenpachi's, he's back up in ship shape. He's ready for fight, and he's way, way better than what Byakuya was in, right? In the better shape. Anyway, so Kenpachi walks in. Muken in the manga, let me just kind of look at it really quick. Yeah. Muken in the manga is pretty much just like a black empty void, the way that Kubo depicts it. Here, it has a little bit of texture. There's like some objects in there. There's like these large pillars that they can like kind of made out of crystal that they could sort of like bounce off of and like jump around and like, you know, sort of have some kind of like battle choreography going on, you know what I mean? So that's why these are there, you know, so they could do some stuff with the environment. He mentions that this is a rather grandiose stage. How did you get permission to use this place? Because this is normally a place only criminals are allowed to be sentenced to. Unohana's there already waiting for him, and she mentions that Muken is completely closed off. It's infinitely large. Oh, there you go. That's probably going to be the thumbnail for this episode, but it's the perfect place to fight. And when she says only, you know, normally non-criminals would not be allowed here, Kenpachi brings up like, oh, calling us non-criminals is kind of a stretch. And he even says, I really like this piece of dialogue. He says, the only thing that separates us from the original, like the regular criminals, is our power. If we were weaker than we were, we would just be run-of-the-mill criminals. Because of our power, because they fear us, they gave us positions of authority. And that's 100% true. Unohana is the original Kenpachi, and Kenpachi is the 11th Kenpachi. And Unohana says, you know, oh, right now, by the way, you have no power. And Kenpachi says, it doesn't matter if I live or die fighting you. You know, that's how I want to go out. It's going to be hell for me either way. She says, you're quite talkative today, aren't you? I liked you better when you were quiet. Every voice, every word that you say, your voice itself brings this single scar you gave me pain. It begins to ache. And so you see the reason why Unohana had her hair tied in that front braid all the time throughout the story. It was to hide this lone scar. Keep in mind, she is the first Kenpachi. She has been in thousands and thousands of battles, and this is the only scar she has that we know of. And it was given to her by Kenpachi Zaraki. Now, to that, Kenpachi also brings up that he has a scar that's aching as well. So the scar that he's had on his face the entire story was also a scar that was given to him during his one and only fight with Unohana. So they, like, managed to damage each other once, and then they went their separate ways. And then obviously Unohana became a captain, and then Kenpachi became a captain a lot later. But yeah, this is like Kenpachi's best day ever. This is like what he has been waiting for and dreaming of his entire life. A rematch with Yachiro Unohana, the only person in the entire freaking world in all dimensions that he respects, and that is Unohana. It's like, are they gonna kiss or are they gonna fight? It's like, yeah. So, she served as the captain of Squad 11. This is Shunsui in his office going through the records of the Seirete, and he's like, oh, okay, so she was the original Squad 11 captain. Squad 11 is what it is today because of Unohana, all right? She was the most notorious criminal in the history of the Soul Society. She gave herself the name Yachiru 8,000 styles, and there she is at her apex, in her glory, in her heyday, just mowing down the rest of the Vandenreich, or the Leaked Reich back then, like it was nobody's business, okay? Shunsui mentions that calling this a sword lesson or just a Zanjutsu class, that's just an exaggeration. One of them will die by the end of this. And the idea is like, they're literally trading out one of the greatest warriors of the Soul Society. Unohana is going to die here, which would be a huge asset for fighting against the Vandenreich. But at the end of the day, Kenpachi, once he unlocks all of his restraints, is in fact even stronger than Unohana. So that's what Unohana realizes. That's what Shunsui realizes. That's what they have to do. They have to train Kenpachi to truly become the Kenpachi that he was always meant to be. And what are you talking about? You know, Kenpachi is already really wicked strong. How could he be so weak? Well, oh my god, I love this shot too. This is a great shot in the manga. I think it was done a little bit better in the manga, but this scene does it amazingly well as well. I mean, like, they just look like straight up demons here. So we cut over while their battle is happening, like while the battles are occurring, like they're clashing swords. We cut over to Isane in the 4th Squad barracks, and we see a letter that Unohana left her lieutenant Isane. And then meanwhile, over at the 11th Squad barracks, Kenpachi left his eye patch for Yachiru to find. They both know what this means. They both know that it's like only, 2 of them enter, 1 person leaves. Only one of them's coming back. They don't know which one it's going to be, but they're also, they're thinking of the worst case scenario. Like, Chiru is like, what if Kenny dies? And Isane is like, what if Captain Unohana dies? Who's like basically a mom to her, essentially. So it's a very sad moment. We have Kenpachi there just getting sliced up by Unohana. She says, I commend you for removing your eye patch from the start, but even without it, you are still restrained. The eye patch that Kenpachi wore up to this point was a special eye patch that was developed by the 12th Division that basically works as siphoning off his Ryatsu, making him weaker than he normally would be. So when he takes off the eye patch, he's like, oh, I'm truly powerful. But even without the eye patch, there are still mental blocks and mental restraints that Kenpachi Zaraki places on himself. And he's not even really aware of that too much, but Unohana definitely is. And you see here, Kenpachi got stabbed with like a dagger, and it was like a dagger that Unohana had in her arm. Like, she kept it in her sleeve, like extra weaponry. And so she mentions that, I don't understand why you would fight with one arm all the time, just with one sword swing, and you wouldn't use the other arm to, attack in other ways, You're swinging your sword with one arm, use the other arm, stab the enemy with a dagger, do, cheap tricks or whatever. That's kind of how the Gote were founded. And Kenpachi mentions that, like, I can't believe, so the way he takes it, the way he interprets it is that Unohana has gotten weaker. He says, oh, when we first fought, you didn't resort to cheap tricks like that, like stabbing me with a dagger. You must have gotten so much weaker if you're going to rely on tactics such as those, However, it's actually reversed. And Unohana says, how dare you admire your enemy amid a battle? That's the worst thing you could do. You're admiring your enemy? That is not what it means to be a Kenpachi. I need to teach you a lesson, Anyway, she brings up that she did not actually get any weaker. The only reason that she didn't use cheap tricks against him last time is because he was strong enough that she did not have the leeway for it. She had to go all out against Kenpachi in the last fight, and now Kenpachi is the one that's gotten weaker. And he begins to realize this, and he begins to realize what really is happening here, that no matter who I cut, you know, beasts or insects or people, I can't imagine insects would be all that fun to cut, but whatever. It was boring. It was the same. The only time I've ever felt fear, the only time I'd ever felt alive is when I fought you. And we see Kenpachi in his younger years here when he was just basically a feral child living out in the furthest reaches of the Rukon district. And it was just like, I wanted to fight just like you. I wanted to be just like you. You're the only person I ever admired. And he begins to weep because this is the only thing that can get Kenpachi emotional. I'm going to die here without ever beating you. Not only that, but I'm going to die here while being weaker than when I first fought you. This is ridiculous. And at that scene, shoop! The sword goes through the back of Kenpachi's neck, and he begins to bleed out. He coughs up blood. The drop lands on Unohana's face, and you think that's it. Kenpachi's dead, and he actually does die there. However, it's like things reset itself. It's like we're doing some... It's like we're doing some JoJo Part 5 GER kind of crap here. It's like we're like, wait a second. It looked like you spaced out there for a moment. We're still fighting. And then Kenpachi's like, wait a second. I thought I died there. Whatever. Screw it. I have to focus on this battle. And so they begin the fight anew. And so this was a mind screw the first time I read this, because you had no idea what was going on. Like, wait a second. Is Unohana's Zanpakuto ability, like, messing with time? Like, what's it doing? And what is happening is that Unohana is actually killing Kenpachi over and over and over again, but because she's also an expert in Kaido, which is healing Kido, she can heal him right back from the brink of death. So basically, she kills him or gets him right to death's door and then brings him back, and then the fight resumes over and over and over again. It happens several times because she mentions, you know, you will not die, Kenpachi Zaraki. I will not allow it, because the flaw that you put upon yourself is that you put these restraints against you. However, every time that Kenpachi Zaraki gets into a fight where he's almost killed, like he's on death's door, that's when he gets stronger, just by a little bit, slowly and surely reawakening his ultimate potential. And Unohana knows this, and so she's like, okay, I'm just going to have to fight you over and over and over again, however many times it takes to kill you, until you finally reach a point where you've unlocked all your restraints. She also brings up, and this is the end of the episode, but she also brings up in the manga, maybe she doesn't bring it up until later, so maybe we'll see it in the next episode, but she brings up that this is the reason that he barely lost against Ichigo in the Soul Society. Like, it was a very, very close fight. And also how he barely won against Noitara, another fight where he very came close to death. It was very close. So it's those fights that give him the toughest opposition, you know, where he almost dies. Like that scene where he was fighting Noitara, and he gets all cut up by Noitara's Resurrection, Santa Teresa, and he's just like, man, I might actually die here today. You know what I mean? He realizes that, and that's how he was able to overcome a little bit of his mental block and able to defeat Noitara with 2 hands. But yeah, so that's the truth power of Kenpachi. It's kind of interesting. I would have liked to see Ichigo at his full power fighting against Kenpachi at his full power and see how that fight would go, but we never got to see that. Anyway, we get the end of the episode, Bleach number 9, The Drop. And Unohana, that says, that's my sin. We're going to find out more about what she means by that in the next episode, her first encounter with Kenpachi Zaraki. The reason Kenpachi has that mental block on him while he subconsciously did that is directly because of the way that Kenpachi, the first Kenpachi, you know, Unohana, fought him way back in the day. So we're going to hear a little bit more about that later. We don't have an after-credits scene. We have the poem with Unohana that I think is just battle is everything. And then we have the next episode, Bleach number 10, The Battle. The Bat-Toll, yes. And that's it. That's episode 9. I hope this episode did better than the last one. I did mess up a few times, so I'm going to have to go back and make sure I edit it properly. What I think next episode is going to be is I think it's going to be just like half of this episode was Ichigo and Renji in the Soul Palace, and the other half was this, the fight between Unohana and Kenpachi Zaraki. I think next episode is going to be that. I think at the pace that they're going, I think that the half of the next episode, or maybe a little bit over half, is going to be the finale of the fight between Kenpachi and Unohana, and then the remainder of the episode will be Ichigo and Renji and Kon arriving at the Hoden. I think that's the way they're going to do it. We'll see. We'll see what happens. Anyway, that was the episode breakdown. Hope you guys all enjoyed. This will be Tekking, signing out. See you next time.